So welcome everyone. I think if you're not familiar with the Theravada group, then we start with chanting the 3 refuges and 5 precepts, and then I'll give some guidance during the meditation, and then a talk, and I hope that you'll ask some questions following that. So I'll start with a dedication of offerings. To the Blessed One, the Lord who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and Blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sangham saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sangham saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sangham saranang gacchāmi. Pāṇātipātā Veramani Sikkāpadaṃ Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinna dana veramani sikkāpadaṃ samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kāmesu micchāchārā veramani sikkāpadaṃ samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musavādā veramani sikkāpadaṃ samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura Mariya Majja Pamadatana Veramani Sikkāpadaṃ Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugatinyanti silena bhoga sampada silena dibutinyanti tasma silang visodhaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore, let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Well, I hope you're sitting comfortably or not. It's not essential to sit comfortably, but there's no need to suffer, to create suffering. Find an upright posture. It may not be as comfortable as one that's slumped, but we're encouraged to sit upright so that as to maintain an alert awareness. And also it's possible to sustain an upright posture and without, in the long term, without it causing pain. The theme I want to bring to this meditation is the middle way. The Buddha described this path as the middle way. And that applies to meditation practice. Meditation is included in the eight aspects of the middle way. So in that case, it's appropriate to bring the middle way practice to our meditation. What would the middle way be in this sitting practice? So it wouldn't be an extreme of discomfort, but nor would it be an extreme of comfort. We're not looking for comfort or discomfort, but we're heading for the middle way, an upright posture. And accepting the way it is, whether it's comfortable or not, would be acting with right understanding. So opening up to the experience and accepting it as it is would be finding the middle. between those two extremes. You could tease out the point of balance, leaning neither forward nor back, nor to right nor left, seeing if you can find the middle between those extremes. The middle way is a point of balance, leaning neither one way nor back towards the other. So discover we're continually teasing out what that point of balance is. It doesn't mean that we'll always get it right, but it's a path of adventure, isn't it? Discovering the middle. The center. Noticing the sensations of the body. We're not trying to obsess with what's painful. No, we're not trying to run away from it, but to notice as it is. Not trying to create pain or trying to avoid it, but simply to notice the sensations of the body. This is the middle way. That's interesting because there's some peace in that. So we can relax into the center. And it's not an effort-filled practice trying to get something or trying to get rid of something. Just finding the middle way is effortless. We're not trying to get something or attain something. We're not trying to get rid of something. Finding the middle between those two. You might think we should be trying to get some peace. That's why we're meditating. But if we're trying to get peaceful, that's a restless state of mind. Trying to get something, trying to become something is a cause of restlessness. And also it leads to suffering. Because it will never be good enough, however peaceful it is. If it's something we have to attain. But when we find the middle, that's a peaceful state. Neither pushing nor pulling is a point of balance. The pendulum's not swinging one way or the other. It's at rest. You can see the middle way as the center that we continually return to. When the mind rushes off after something or recoils from something, when we let that go, let it be, return to the center, we just come home to the center. The middle way isn't going anywhere. It's not rushing here and there. It's a place we return to. The center, the stillness. Mind has a capacity to find its own still center because that's the nature of the mind. We don't need to create it because it's natural. The natural state of the mind is to be at ease. So when we let go of the grasping mind, we simply return to a center, a point of balance that's naturally peaceful. But if you find it difficult to sustain that, then why wouldn't you? Mind's very used to rushing here and there, so there's no need to judge the mind for reacting to conditions. No need to criticize the conditions that we react to. Understanding the conditioned nature of our experience helps us put it into perspective. We don't need to criticize and judge wherever we are. When we stop blaming ourselves, judging ourselves, then we can let these things cease in their own time. We're not adding more conditions, making anything out of it. So we can use that mantra. I don't need to make anything out of this. I can just let it cease right here. We'll find that we return to that still center, the middle way. We can think that what we're experiencing isn't good enough, that it shouldn't be this way. Or we can think that there's something missing, that we should try harder to get something, because if we could get it, everything would be fine, it would be perfect. These ways of thinking are so deep-rooted we might not notice. When we notice that way of thinking, we just accept it as it is. Wherever we are is the right place to be. There's nowhere else we should be right now. We have to accept where we are, to accept the way it is. This is where we begin. Over and over again. coming to the end of our meditation, seeing if there's any joy in that centeredness, that middle wayness that you might have discovered. Seeing if it couldn't be a source of joy and happiness, that there is nowhere to go and nowhere to get to run away from. That here's good enough. Already that sense of coming home. And why wouldn't it be joyful? We're heading in the direction of the end of suffering. Ding. 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 So I think the middle way is a very interesting theme because we often overlook the obvious. The Buddha's path is called the middle way, yet how often do we reflect on that? Well, we know the first sermon where the Buddha says that he found the middle way. He says that his teaching is the middle way between two extremes, the extreme of indulgence and the extreme of austerity. That's what he says. But I think it's much wider than that. Well, we can interpret it in a much broader sense. If we just think of it in terms of the extreme between austerity and indulgence, we think of the Buddha living as a prince, having all his needs met, then renouncing that, living as an ascetic for 6 years, and effectively renouncing that, saying that that didn't lead to enlightenment. So giving up his ascetic practice and realizing the middle way, which is a path that's not deliberately seeking pleasure, but neither deliberately seeking pain. So that's what we're told is the middle way. And his Eightfold Path is the middle way. But I think that's a limited way of seeing it. I think it's interesting to explore how we can bring the middle way to all of those 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path. So how would we do that? What would be the middle way in the right understanding? Well, you can find, I'm speaking my own reflections here, and you can reflect in your own way. But what occurs to me is it's the middle way between views, and neither one way of not holding on to views, which would be a one extreme of right understanding. We sometimes call it right view, don't we? The right view is not to hold on to or attach to a view, any view about anything. Rather than, it's interesting because you might think, I should hold on to some sort of right view, as though that the Buddha taught that there was a right view that we should hold on to, but his teaching is more about letting go of wrong views. Wrong views pretty much anything that we hold on to, anything that we grasp by way of a view. And right understanding is the middle way of that. Would be one. We're not. It's not holding on to anything. So, in what way would we hold on to an understanding? We might hold on to the written word, saying, "Oh, well, it's got to be in the scriptures." Where is it in the scriptures? Where is it? If it's not there, if I can't find it, then it's wrong. That would be holding on to an extreme, wouldn't it? Thinking that right understanding is if it's not written down, it's not understood. Whereas actually it's the other way around, isn't it? We understand, and then we rather go back to the suttas to understand what it is, to kind of a realization of truth, and then we go back and see what the suttas have to say, really, and rather than hold on to a view about what the suttas say and then try to experience it. And it might sound a bit weird, but I think that we bring, even if we know nothing about Buddhism, and it's the first time we come to the Buddha's teaching, we don't come from nothing. We don't bring nothing. We come from somewhere. We can only build on what we already know. So in a sense, what connects us to the Buddha's teaching is what we already know. It resonates with something, doesn't it? That otherwise we wouldn't stay here. We wouldn't listen. So we are already hearing something that we know, but it's in words that helps us understand it more clearly. So we don't hold on or attach to the word, but we rather bring our experience to the word and see whether if it can help us make sense of our experience. This is why Buddhist meditation is so important, because that's how we gain direct experience. Or continually, you can read the Satipatthana Sutta and you can get an idea of, well, the Buddha's teaching us to practice like this, but you can intellectually it's meaningless. Whereas until you put it into practice, it doesn't come alive. So we investigate. We have to discover what mindfulness is through our own experience. We can't. Attaching to a definition that takes us further away from mindfulness. It becomes a belief. We think we know what mindfulness is because we read it in a book, and then it becomes just another layer of delusion, isn't it? Just holding on to a definition of something. So there's a middle way of right understanding wouldn't be holding on to the word. But then it wouldn't be holding on to experience, saying that's all there is. But we don't need the Dhamma. All we need to do is meditate, and that's all. There's nothing else. That's enough. Don't read books. That's an interesting idea, isn't it? Don't read books. That actually isn't helpful in ultimate sense. We can say to someone, not to read books. If they're very obsessed with reading books, that might be a kind of helpful advice. But really, what we're heading for is a middle way. It's a bringing together, a mirror, a marriage of experience and teaching, so that we can reference our experience back to what the Buddha taught. Otherwise, we could go astray quite easily. So we don't reject what the Buddha taught, saying, no, I've got to find my own way. But we don't hold on to what the Buddha taught and think that is that you can't step beyond that. Because if we hold on to what the Buddha taught, well, that isn't the path either. It's a path of letting go. We have to let go. So we find the middle way of right understanding. Well, that's my own reflection, and you might find your own way, your own reflection on that. Right intention, right intention or right thinking. What comes to mind is avoiding the extreme of the grasping mind, of trying to get rid of, get away from. That thinking through the center, not trying to make sense of the world. I think that's something which is helpful advice. We can get very attached to trying to make sense of everything, and that becomes very intellectual and dry activity, and we don't trust in the truth to be revealed if we have to make sense of it. So that confidence, the self-confidence that comes from trusting in the stillness of the mind, that's finding the center, willingness to find the center. That's a stillness there, and in that, in a sense, the right way of thinking is to see that, to have the confidence or the sense of direction. We talk about our intention, to hold true to a sense of direction, that's enough. That if we can just trust in the Dhamma to reveal its truth to us, then we don't have to grasp it. Because the Dhamma is available in every moment, in every passing cloud, in every sunbeam, in every shower of rain. The Dhamma is available, so we don't have to go and to make it. It's available, but we have to allow it to reveal itself. And we can only do that if we let go of our conditioned way of thinking. So we can. That's why I said, we inherit our conditioned reality. We shouldn't despise it. We don't need to criticize where we are, but accept where we are. But we don't need to attach to it. We can let it go. We can accept it and let it go. So that means we're not trapped in our conditioned world. We don't need to try to run away from it or try to grasp it, but we can accept it, and then we're not it starts to lose its power over us. We start to see things more clearly. If we were rejecting our conditioned reality, we would be obsessed with pushing it away, with running away. And if it's not good enough, we have to try to grasp something different from what we have, then we're obsessed with trying to get something else, aren't we? So that's just an expression of this obsession that we have, the obsession of delusion. But when we accept, then we're not trapped. We can start to see things more clearly. I was thinking about this middleness around the ethical, the moral life, finding the middle way. Is not, if we had to, if we don't find a balance in right speech, for example, we can create a lot of problems out of it. We can be honest, but we don't have to tell people everything. And we don't have to speak when it's not appropriate. Just so that's like we can be honest without having to be cruel. And find something that's skillful to say without being critical, for example, when it wouldn't be beneficial to be critical of someone, but we can find a way of speaking something that's truthful but not critical. If we took it to extremes, then we would just go around telling everyone how it is. We'd be pointing out everyone's faults, wouldn't we? We'd think that was being truthful, to being honest, but that's actually just criticizing and pointing out the faults of others when we're not looking at the faults that we have. Perhaps overlooking our own faults and finding fault in other people. I notice that sometimes I've met people who will point out when other people are breaking the precepts, when they'll say, "Oh, these people come to the monastery and they don't keep the 5 precepts." Well, it's not the way to practice the 5 precepts. The way to practice the 5 precepts is to keep them yourself, not to criticize other people for not keeping the precepts. And one way we would keep them is not to speak unskillfully. So, speech, right action, right livelihood. There's a middle wayness in that can help hugely in life. It can be a struggle, I think, for people to keep the middle way in right speech, right action, right livelihood. Can be quite evangelistic in their Buddhism, almost feeling like they can't find a right livelihood, and so there's no such thing as right livelihood. So that maybe the right thing to do is to not have a job at all, and then you just become a burden on society. So that's taking it too far. It's not finding the middle way. Or with right action, you might think to not just to just become quite a challenge for everyone else to live with, because you're taking it too far, and not finding the middle way. It's, you know, I find, let's say there are times when you can travel by train, and it's better to travel by train than to take the car. But there are times when it's appropriate to take the car because you can't get there. There isn't a train, or there isn't. It's just not appropriate. It's appropriate to take the car. So I, on the other hand, if you feel like it's not appropriate to have a car, then that's absolutely fine. And it would be, you know, we have to take our own view about how we should live. And if we think that having a car is unskillful, then I applaud that. But it's you know, if it's well, if it helps and it makes life a lot easier to have a car, that's, you know, that's also perhaps that's the middle way for you. So there's no kind of laid down rule, is there, about finding the middle way? But it's a sense we have to tease it out, and so that's a fascinating thing. How do you bring the middle way to our ethical values? And again, in particular, with regard to meditation, how to bring a middle way to effort, you know, finding right effort. Because if you make effort into a burden, that's not right effort, trying too hard. Or just not making the effort, not trying hard enough, you know. Or with mindfulness, you could say, well, you can never have too much mindfulness, but you could make it a burden by always feeling like, oh, I failed, I wasn't mindful. Right mindfulness is about bringing mindfulness to that experience, that sense of failing, and being there with that. When we realized according to our definition, we weren't mindful, then just being mindful of that moment is mindfulness. And not to go to an extreme with regard to concentration. That's another one where to find the middle way, where if we're obsessed with a state of calm, then that creates a burden, a lot of suffering, because we might struggle to attain that calm state. And it's difficult to keep sustaining the conditions for a calm state of mind, trying to continually be anxious about having the right state, right conditions, so that the mind will be calm, is a cause of suffering. That's not the middle way. So that's a very good one to practice the middle way in. So I think that's an interesting exploration, the middle way. I also wanted to emphasize that I think that in the middle way there's a wonderful joy, wonderful joyfulness. That when we can find, there's an easefulness in that. When we let go of the extreme of trying to get away from, then we come to a natural sense of ease. So I think the realization, there's a realization of the middle way. I think that when we realize the Buddha's teachings, we talk about realizing the middle way. That's an experience of joy. So something that we can kind of align ourselves towards, and perhaps nurture in our practice, and and recognize when it arises. Yeah. So I'd like you to ask any questions you have, and if you can do that in chat, then I can pick that up. If anyone would prefer to unmute themselves, then I can take a question that way. I hope the noise of the rain beating down on my roof isn't causing too much of a problem. I think Zoom is supposed to take out background noise, so it might not sound too loud for you. It sounds quite loud here, but it might be affecting the sound quality. But for me, actually, it's a lovely sound. So I like that sound of the rhythm of the rain beating on the roof. I think I'd be very happy living in a tin shack. I used to love the sound of the rain beating on the roof at the retreat centre because that's quite a thin roof and you could hear it. Yeah, no rain sounding, because I think that Zoom's relatively good at cutting out background noise. So somebody says no rain sounds this end, although I do find it soothing. I find it that the middle way is just natural. It's the I can see why the Buddha discovered the middle way. I kind of just think he realized this in a very natural way, that it's the natural state of mind. It's the point of least effort, isn't it? Where you're not trying to fix anything, not the point of no interference. There's nowhere to go and nowhere to get away from. So it's a natural state. So I can imagine that he realized and why he called it the middle way. He found that he'd been striving, either trying to be happy or trying to create suffering. There's striving involved in both those two extremes. And there's no calm, there's no peacefulness in that. So I think I'm not surprised he called his teachings the middle way. I'm not finding any questions. I don't know why. Do feel free to unmute.
I actually typed in one, but you might not see it for whatever reason. Oh, because it needs to be shared by the host, probably.
Is it going to the host? Oh,
I think so. To the Buddhist Society, direct message.
Somebody has sent it to me. I've received one that's come to me.
Mine was what kind of chanting practices are done on the day of Vesak? Is there anything special or that one does? I suppose it is on Wednesday. I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, full moon's on Wednesday, and I think Amaravati is celebrating Vesak on the following Sunday. So of any particular chant, well, the Buddha's first sermon was of course that's chanted after Vesak. It's chanted at the full moon of July, because it took him 6 weeks or so, wasn't it, or whatever time it took him to walk to. He spent 2 weeks in Bodh Gaya, is that right? And then spent 4 weeks walking to Varanasi. I'm not sure about that, but I think that's so. His first sermon was given in the full moon of July. So we always chant the Dhammacakka Pavatana Sutta in the full moon of July. So I don't know what particular teachings are chanted on the Vesak, because he didn't give any teachings at this on the day of his enlightenment. Somebody might know the answer to that. I'll be very happy if you put your hand up and tell us. Someone's sent me a nice question. How do you practice the middle way if you find yourself involved in an emotional situation? So let's imagine some emotional situation. So what comes to mind is someone shouting at you. You've done something, and for whatever reason, they are unhappy with that, and they're saying something that's unpleasant to hear. You don't like what they're saying, and so there's an aversion comes up in that. Well, the middle way would be not pushing it away, because if we were to follow the extreme of avoidance, we would push it away. We'd try to suppress it, the emotional feeling, and or otherwise, we don't have to neither obsess about it either, in a sense. We don't need to create it, just need to notice it, let it be, let it go. So the middle way of emotion is just to notice it, to let it be and let it go. We don't need to make anything out of it. If we run away from it or run towards it, we make something out of it. But to notice it, let it be and let it go. It's this path of mindfulness, isn't it? We notice it. Noticing can be there's two ways, helpful ways of noticing. One is to label it. When you notice it, you might not know what it is. You might notice a feeling of feelings arisen, but you don't really know what's happened. And I think especially with emotion, and especially for men, they find the emotions difficult to access. So it's useful to label it, because that helps us to know what it is. So we might notice it and think, oh, that's aversion. That's what that is. I don't like what they're saying. So it can be helpful to label it and say, what I'm experiencing is aversion. It's almost like we have to admit it. It's like, no, I'm feeling aversion here. I don't like what they said to me, and this is aversion. So we have to admit it, So labeling it can be helpful. And then let go of the label, because we have to experience it for what it is. So the reason we have to let go of the label is because if once we've labeled it, we put it in a box, and we can easily then think that the job's done, that we know it now, that's all it is. And throw it out, throw it away, and we think that we've done it then, but we haven't. That's just the beginning. When we've recognized what it is, then we let go of the label, and then we experience it fully. So experiencing, you can't experience something if you think you know what it is. So if you labeled it, you think you know what it is. And that's so we think we know its version, but then we let go of the label, and then we experience what it is. Let it be, whatever it is. And then we'll know what a version feels like. So experience it fully without our preconception of what it is, so that you label it so as to overcome that kind of barrier of not admitting what it is, and then you let go of the label so you can experience it without the preconception of what you think it is. And then you investigate to discover what it really is, and that's wonderful. And then we experience it fully, and then don't try to get rid of it. We just let it end in its own time, and it will cease by itself. So this is the wonderful thing about finding the middle way with emotion. It's really, really helpful. So the person that asked that question said they're new to Buddhism. They didn't know if they were sorry if it didn't make sense. Well, it makes a lot of sense to me. I think that it's wow, so important to learn that middle way, because that's the kind of essence of mindfulness practice, isn't it? To find the middle way, to not just to react, but just and there's the middle way of another aspect of it, the middle way of letting be and letting go. Those two, there's a middle wayness between those two, isn't there? Because when we notice emotion, for example, letting it be so that we know it fully and we experience it fully, but letting it go. Those two, if you go to the extreme of letting go, then you push it away before you've experienced it fully. So there's a middle way between letting it be, and if you just let it be, you can indulge in it too much. You've got to be, it's about letting go. So that's fascinating, isn't it? Finding a middle way between letting be and letting go. Wow. Somebody's written a long question. Somebody's written a short question. Is there a middle way between right and wrong? Yeah, I think so. Because things that you believe are right, everything that we hold on to, it might be true in the moment. It was right now, in this moment. But only in this moment. It's not right. As soon as we hold on to something, we make it wrong. So you're right. Something that's right now is right in the moment, and then we hold on to it and we think it's going to be right forever, and then it's not. It's wrong. It becomes sooner or later it will be wrong. The thing that you always thought was right turns out to be wrong. because the conditions have changed. It's not right anymore. So you can be, if you hold on to you're right, if you think something's right and you hold on to it, then sooner or later it'll let you down and it will be wrong. Let's say if you think that you say something, it's the right thing to say. Well, sooner or later it will be the wrong thing to say. Or if it was, let's say it's it's always right to give. You should always give. Well, sooner or later it will be wrong. Or if it was always right to trust, sooner or later it will be wrong. So, you can't believe in right and wrong. It's not like that. So I think there's a middle wayness in that. There's a very long question. Somebody must type very quickly because I'd never be able to write this much. I have a question regarding right speech. I find it difficult to uphold right speech, particularly when I'm joking around with friends and family. On these occasions, my mind operates in a rapid-fire mode, and I often use coarse language, although it's not directed towards others. My intentions are just to make others laugh, with no one slandered or gossiped about. However, I know I'm reinforcing an unskillful habit. How best should one act by engaging socially on conversing with others, not becoming completely tight-lipped, but on the other hand, not veering into uncouth speech? Well, it's hard, isn't it? Yeah, well, finding a way. We're aiming at a kindness. I often it's not easy because what we're heading towards is a state of mind where we can relax and be at ease, so that we don't need to be anxious about what we're going to say because we can trust ourselves not to speak unskillfully. So our what you might call banter with friends, we recognize when it's unskillful and we don't do that. We don't agree. In fact, what happens is we tend to struggle with those kind of conversations because it's very hard not to agree by your silence, simply by not joining in, but by being there when people are speaking in an unskillful way, like criticizing others when without any evidence or foundation, and just to speak behind their back. And that's very hard to be with people like that. So it's sometimes just necessary to be silent and not to join in. So at least we don't encourage that kind of speech. But it could be, I don't want to encourage you to be silent, completely silent, because we need, communication is very important. So, I don't know, it's difficult. It's important to engage socially with people. And, I think there is a point at which we have to investigate where we're coming from. So are we saying these things so that people will like us? And it is interestingly, I think in this question, I'm suspecting that the person who said that I find it difficult to uphold right speech, particularly when I'm joking around with friends and family. Well, there's if we really investigate, what are we doing? We're doing this to be liked. But it might be that it's not coming from the heart. That where it's a performance. We're putting on this performance for our friends and family because that's who they expect us to be. And it's maybe a model that we're not very comfortable with. And as we practice Buddhism and start to take up the practice of right speech, then we might realize that we're not comfortable with that. And we might just have to accept that we have to change, and people might just have to put up with that we might not want to be that person that carries on the performance of being jovial and joking around with friends and family. That might not come from the heart. And it might be quite a relief to everyone when we stop doing that. And it's always difficult, I think, for people to accept that you might change. Change is always challenging, but we have to be, most important, we have to live with ourselves rather than how we have to live with other people. So we have to find a way of living with ourselves that's find a way that resonates with that sense of our own integrity and supports our own values. So, it's okay to change. And it's not, we don't need to feel like we're gonna, if other people don't like it when we change, they'll come round to it, because we're essentially what's in every good relationship is that people want to be kind. Essentially, people, it's based on kindness. So, if you were to ask someone to accept you as you are, well, why wouldn't they? And in the same way, you would accept them as they are, wouldn't you? Because that's an act of kindness. So ultimately, then that's what people will do. They will accept you as you are. So that gives us confidence, self-confidence to change. And if people struggle, they'll come round to it. So I think it's now time to bring the evening to an end. Thank you very much for your questions. That's been really helpful. And I'll share the screen. Do the closing homage. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. So, just want to remind people there is Vesak on Wednesday, the full moon of May. So, especially if you're not familiar with the Buddhist festivals, you might be interested to Google that, see what Vesak is about, and perhaps you might be interested to look in on Zoom at Amaravati or Chithurst or any other Vesak festival. Because now with Zoom, I'm sure they'll all be on Zoom, so you've got the opportunity to go and visit any number of Vesaks and see what's happening. So I hope you enjoy that. So although the full moon is on Wednesday, the Vesaks are often celebrated on different days, often at the weekends. So you'll find you've got plenty of choice. So thank you for joining me this evening, and farewell. Walk cheerfully over the world.